Hi, welcome to Write More Light. My name is Sarah. I'm with the Midwest Writing Center, and Write More Light is a web series in which once a week I give you an itty bitty lesson in something literary, and once a week I interview somebody doing something awesome in the arts. Fortunately, today is one of those interview days. Um, After the meat of the episode, I will give you updates on the Midwest Writing Center and leave you with a writing prompt. So, let's get to it. Thanks for watching. I am super pumped to introduce to you Amy Lee Lillard, author of 5 books, including Exile and Guyville, which was the winner of the 2022 BOA Editions Short Fiction Prize, A Grotesque Animal, which is how I was introduced to Amy's writing from the University of Iowa Press, and Dig Me Out, which I have now lost, though it was sitting next to me moments ago. From Atelier26 Books. She's the creator of the Art of Resistance podcast and Rebel Yell Creative, both I have to recommend, um, which aim to help creative people use art to resist the status quo. She's co-creator of Broads and Books Productions, which includes Midwest Weird Audio Literary Magazine, Fuzzy Memories podcast, and the Wyrd Woman audio drama. She's received a Pushcart and an Iowa Author Award. And as far as I can tell, she's really cool. Thanks for hanging out with me today.
You're
As
welcome, and I hope I am. Yes.
far as I can tell, I can't make
Awesome.
any promises.
Okay.
I found Dig Me Out. Here we go.
Awesome.
So I like to open with this question for everybody, and it's gonna be the hardest question. How did you come to writing? So it
Oh
used to
boy.
be, why do you write? And that's the hard question. How did you come to
It
writing?
is.
It's not as hard.
Yeah. I think both of those are difficult, but how I came to writing, I probably like a lot of people, very young. I think, I read early, I wrote early. I think I mentioned it in my memoir, but at one point when I was maybe around 10, I did a magazine parody because my mom had a lot of like Good Housekeeping and that kind of crap around. So, and I read anything and everything that came in the house, but I could also recognize like a lot of this is bullshit. So I did a little, parody zine, and I had such a fun time with that, creating it really for nobody. I showed it to my parents and they were like, I don't know what to do with this. But I just enjoyed the process of it. And that was probably one of the first times I thought like this is something I want to do and also kind of need to do, if that makes sense.
I love that, especially because that's not just writing.
Mhm.
I mean, that's, well, first of all, zine, but it's collage and it's hybrid, and hybrid is definitely, well, A, my soft spot.
Mhm.
But B, I think a hallmark of your work from the
Yes.
book and a half that I've read.
Yes. No, I think that's something I really enjoy doing is trying to figure out the best way to tell a story, and how it can be different from other ways of telling stories, how it can be unique in a way. I mean, there's the idea that nothing is ever unique and you're always stealing from other things, and that's cool, that's fine. But like you can always tell the same story in a different way. And that's what I'm always kind of looking for is that different way. And yeah, I don't know if I can fully claim the parody idea myself. My aunt at the time had a parody magazine of Cosmopolitan for cats. It was called
Yeah.
Catmopolitan. And I thought it was hilarious, and I was probably in some way trying to emulate that. But I loved that idea of like taking something that exists and like let's turn it on its head and see what we can do.
No, that's awesome. I cannot remember. Oh, I had a friend who had this wonderful idea, which has not at least yet come to fruition, but it was like a like an HOA newsletter, but garden gnomes.
Oh my God.
And I feel like that's exactly what those
What we need.
are, right?
Yeah.
Like we're taking ourselves too seriously here. Um,
Yes.
but I love to like fashion and relationship advice for cats. That's got to be so good and so fun to
Yeah.
write.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know how that came to be or how big of an audience it had, but my aunt had it, and that was all. She had all the weird stuff. So yeah.
That's amazing.
Mhm.
I also, in addition to like just hybrid writing, like you're certainly not contained to any particular medium in your work in general. And I don't know, I should acknowledge that from jump.
Yeah, and that, is relatively recent. In 2019, my best friend was like, "Hey, we should make a podcast." I was like, "Cool, how does one make a podcast?" And then so we learned how to do that. And once I learned how to do that and learned how to tell an audio story, I was like, "Well, this is an entire other way to tell a story that was really exciting and really fun to do."
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
no. What you've said about like the finding the right way or the best way to tell whatever particular story really
Mhm.
hits for me. And I feel like just like as a writer myself, it's often the biggest problem I have, like
Yes.
getting in my own way. Where I'm like, I
Mm.
had an idea, and therefore I have to stick with this idea when like that's not actually what the piece wants.
But it's such a good thought because for so long I had the idea that if I started a book, I had to finish that damn book, even if I hated it. And I think that's an idea with writing too. Like if we have an idea, we have to stick with that thing, even though it sucks. That was my first novel in like the 2000s. I was trying to write something like Margaret Atwood, how you do when you try and be like the people that you
Yeah, you
really
love
admire.
something.
Exactly. And right away it was probably shit, but I was just like, I have this idea and I have to finish it and I have to make it happen, and stuck with it way longer than I should have because of that reason of like, well, I have to do it. I can't get out of my own way. I have to stick with this.
Oh man, completionism is evil.
It is.
It's just
It
evil.
is. It's I think it's tied to a lot of purism of like, you know, if you're a fan of something, you have to be a fan of everything, and you have to be a fan of the early stuff, and you have to be a fan of this. And there's a lot of snobbery with music and books and things like that, when really it's like, let's just read and listen to what we enjoy. Let's just make what we enjoy, all of that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, especially I mean I haven't really experienced this as an adult.
Mhm.
But the like idea that your fandom is performative or you're a poser if you're not educated in every aspect of something is
Yeah,
so bad for us, like
it
as
is so bad for
people.
us. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of like, for most of my life, I dated men, and then I realized, oh, I
That's the
like
first mistake.
exactly. That was the first mistake. And then I realized, well, I'm more than that. I identify as queer now, but like, especially when you're in the straight men world, there's that purity. There's that idea of like, well, you're not a real fan unless you can name 5 songs, blah, blah, blah. And for a long time, I subscribed to that. And part of, I think, finding my writer's voice was letting go of a lot of that,
Mm.
letting go of completionism, purity, all of that kind of stuff, and just doing what feels and sounds right.
There was something that came up the other day, and I to my mother said that I didn't believe it should be a pissing contest, which really threw her off. But it was something about like, oh, okay. Are you familiar with Whitey's ice cream?
I've heard of it. Is it Iowa City?
I think it's Quad Cities based, but
Okay.
I'm in the Quad Cities, and I said that my masculinity was called into question, not that it was a pissing contest. But their milkshakes are really thick,
Oh,
and I have always understood that you're still supposed to use a straw for it.
yeah, but
And I was like, I'm not I'm not interested in my masculinity being called into question over whether or not I'm using a spoon or a straw. But I feel like it's stuff like that, like how spicy your food is, and like things that should not matter at all,
yeah,
become these like, well, you said purity, which is much kinder a term. Um, but it's so toxic for all of us, but
it is.
especially poor men.
Yeah, I hear poor men and I'm like, oh, good Lord. But then also, yeah, yes, poor
I
men.
mean, yeah,
Yes,
they're doing fine,
they're doing.
except for the prison that they're in.
except for, the whole system. Um, yeah, I think especially realizing that I was autistic, which I only learned much later in life at age 43, which was kind of the impetus for the book that you read. Um, I realized that a lot of that was coming from this idea of being observed at all times, and I had to perform the right, like I had to perform being a person, I had to perform being a woman, and perform being this. And uh, once I realized what was behind that, then I was like, this sucks. Like, I don't like doing this. I like being my weird self. And once you do that, you can let go of some of that, I think.
I think too, yes, and thank you. Um, Getting to be an adult, right? And
Yeah.
I think that's a moving goalpost.
Yeah.
Um, and performing so much, and it's a performance. It's a
There's,
performance, like existing in the world to someone's expectations because you're pretty sure you're doing it wrong. Like, um, I can. I'm just gonna talk about your book. Um, it is so correct to me. I think every chapter, or maybe they're not chapters, but every section
Mhm.
is written. I don't like the limited words I have to describe this. It's formally different.
Yes.
And
Yeah, it is.
sometimes the voice is different or the style, but
Yeah.
makes so much sense with how I don't even want to say like self-discovery is happening, but um but that's what it is. Like the understanding of the self is developing
Yes.
in this. I'm not trying to talk about your life like it's a book, but um
No, I get it. I think that's why I really gravitated to the idea of being formally different when I was writing these, because I feel like sometimes I am a different person around different people, and I've had to be. And you're right, like discovering that and understanding why that is, not just autism, but you're right, like the bigger system of work and capitalism and everything. We're all sort of acting a role, but this was just so much more of a deeper discovery that you're right, the forms in which I wrote kind of echoed that or showed that.
oh yeah, beautiful illustration of it. But I think autism in particular is important here. I think that there's a
Mhm.
level of masking that we're totally unaware of, like as humans. And honestly, I think that normies, well, I have a hard time believing they exist at all, but I'm sure that they do it too. There's a lot of discussion of like code switching is normal and natural
Yes.
and involuntary.
Hmm.
And I think within that, I think people think of masking as part of that, and I'm pretty sure that's not accurate. But I think, sorry for that sound. But I think that understanding and developing an understanding of masking, I feel like I'm gonna have to define masking. Do you want to define masking?
Yeah, I think that I think you're right that there's level of masking that a lot of people do, especially when you're a woman in the world. Whether you're a straight woman, but then it compounds when you're a queer woman, then compounds when you're a woman of color, all of these things. There's that code switching element, which in some ways I think is masking. For autistic people, I think it's from a very early age, I just had to look at everybody and study them like I was studying for a dissertation or something, of like, how do people do this? But the problem is, I learned some of it, but, and some of that, everyone does, but then it's sort of like a innate knowledge after that. It never clicked really for me. It never clicked very well. I could pretend, I could fake it till I made it. And I've had to do that my whole life.
And well,
Um,
yeah,
yeah.
I'm an
Um,
expert in this topic.
yes. And then, but then over time, that what happened, the experience that I had is that you start disappearing under the mask, because like if you're trying so hard to try and be like the normies, you know, and especially when you don't understand why it's so hard, you lose your sense of self or you don't understand your sense of self. I think that's a big part of the book was trying to figure out um, what's autism, what's class and the way that I grew up, what's gender, what's sexuality, like all of these different layers, trying to peel back what's trauma, like what's all of this kind of stuff. Um, so I think what is masking was kind of a big question that I was trying to figure out, you know?
Yeah, and thank you for, I think that that was a really beautiful description of masking, this like study and performance.
Yes.
Um, and I think how each chapter's formal and stylistic changes differ is also a really, and I don't know, I'll ask you in a minute. Um, I was gonna say I don't know if you wrote it in order or how that came about, and I will ask that. So, uh,
Mm-hmm.
so please hold. Um, is also on its own, on its face, an illustration of unmasking.
Yes.
And we've got like part of this is a chronological development of a human being. But part of it is I just don't think there's a chronology to how a person develops.
No.
But you do give us this through hybridity. Yeah, I'm
Hmm.
just gonna write an essay about your book.
Well, you kind of did. You wrote a beautiful review in Little Village, which was really touching, and I really appreciated that. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Mhm.
I love writing a review of a book I love. It's different if you don't. But it's yeah, I think a really elegant illustration of unmasking. And so I think that's also just really important for, I guess, the general discussion of, well, both hybrid writing and, well, not both, for hybrid writing and identity writing, but then also
Mhm.
like neurodivergence and autism in general.
Yeah. And I think part of something that I didn't quite realize until I was writing the book was I was also in some ways trying to unmask my family without their permission, without their wanting to be. And that's a whole other dynamic. But it's interesting that, you know, we're recording this right now in April, which is Autism Awareness Month. It's such a month of outright fuckery because no one can talk about autism in a sane way. And there's still so many people that are trying to cure it, and so many people that are just like, you know, productivity is everything. And if you step out of that, then, you know, how dare you kind of thing. Um, but yeah, I was trying to understand how much of like my parents' behaviors was performance, how much of my brother's behaviors were performance, my aunt, my grandma, you know, like this complicated family tree that once I really started digging, I thought, especially the women in my family, like they've been so difficult, maybe because they're autistic as well. They would never want to own that or accept that, but it might be the truth nonetheless, you know?
That's so heartbreaking for me. It just in general that like for whatever reason, I mean whatever reason, um there's stigma attached to, I don't know, a lot of diagnoses. And I know so I at the time felt old. I was 27 when I got an ADHD diagnosis.
Mm.
And it was so goddamn liberating. It was like, oh, all of these things that I hate about myself, all of these things that I've been trying to change, which are inherent to me,
Hmm.
and also because they're inherent to me, like they affect my art, which is the thing I love most about myself. But these are
Yes.
things that I hate about myself.
Hmm.
I'm not broken. My brain straight up looks different,
Yeah.
or is built different. I don't know what brains look like. Uh, um,
I'm picturing our brains as very arty, you know, just very abstract
you know,
versus like the scientific like model of a brain.
I have a friend who, um, I will name them. Um, so I'm trying to remember if their writer name is different from their name. Um, Kai Parker, they have a children's book out, and we've
Mhm.
published a couple of their poems with MWC Press. Um, but when their daughter was diagnosed with autism, and now later Kai has been diagnosed autistic as well. Um, but when their daughter was diagnosed, they came up with this really beautiful analogy because
Mhm.
she's only, I think, like 7 currently, which is that Joey's the daughter. And Joey's great. Joey comes to our band book events. Has a rainbow brain where other people's brains are like monochromatic.
Ooh,
And each autistic person has a different arrangement of colors.
yes.
And I just first wish everyone had that analogy. It is perfect.
Yeah,
Um,
lovely.
but it's also just like it's not broken, it's built different.
Well, that's a good way to describe, because obviously everyone talks about autism being on a spectrum and everyone is different and everyone manifests in a different way. I like the color analogy because people could probably get that a lot better. When you just say you're on a spectrum, then there's this sort of stupid remarks of like, well, you don't look autistic or you don't act autistic or whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. Um, and when I first sort of recognized this was my thing, um, I sort of had to be like, well, you don't see the work that's going on behind the scenes. You don't see all of the extra effort for every goddamn second in this, rainbow brain versus, whatever's happening in yours.
And it's also so like I think I started this with stigma, and that's yeah, that's what it was. The diagnosis just of ADHD was so
Mhm.
liberating for me because
Yes.
it I don't want to say it forgave, but it felt like being forgiven for flaws. And they're not flaws. Just different. And
Well,
without
language,
that,
yeah, language is important, right? Like
without
having a
that,
name for things is very powerful.
and there's a lot of people who, hear autism or
Hmm.
ADHD, or I'm sure there are other things that fall under the neurodivergence umbrella that
Hmm.
they're less in the cultural milieu. Um, they I don't know. They think of Rain Man and they think that's bad. I don't know. I don't, I
And
mean, I
to be
loved,
fair, one thing that I was learning as I was writing my book too was some of the history of autistic people and the institutionalization that was just pretty much accepted through most of the 19th century. Um, So I guess especially for people like me who grew up in the 80s and the institutionalized version of autism was all we ever saw, there was never going to be like a me connecting to that, and there's so much different criteria for girls and women. And my friend has often asked me, do you think it would have been better if you had known you were autistic when you were younger, like your friend Joey? And my first thought is because of where I grew up and my family, the answer is no, because I would have been stigmatized in many ways, which would have hurt so much more, I think, versus just not knowing what the hell was going on, which sucks so bad.
we're like, uh, labels have their place, right? Sometimes
Yeah.
they're freeing and sometimes they're the constricting.
And it would have been the same thing like if I had claimed a queer identity at the time, that would have not been welcome, like it's like you said, labels are important, but they can be, especially in different times, very dangerous.
I'm just, yeah. It would be the label that would have been a problem as a
Hmm.
kid, but also like what if somebody had said, you don't have to study people to exist in the world. You still have your place. You don't have to act perfectly to, I mean, of course, whether or not it's true that you would have, any of us would have been looked on kindly if we
Yeah.
didn't perform that way is different. But like, given that freedom makes a huge difference.
Yes.
I don't know how I went down that road. I just believe really strongly in it.
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, we could spend a long time just talking about that. And I go back and forth all the time about like, what if things had been different? What if I had learned about even in my 20s, like you, if I had learned about that, maybe I wouldn't have been in the bad relationships I was in. Maybe I wouldn't have been taken advantage of in many different ways at work, in, family, at with all of that. Because as much as you can learn about what behavior is like, it's a very different thing when you're trying to please someone, when you're trying to live in that world versus, yeah, you lose yourself real quick and you lose your sense of protection and just being a valuable person.
Man, your relationships and work is like I don't know, I didn't see that coming.
Mhm.
But yeah, if I understood that there are a lot of like pieces of I think like social construction, social the way that we relate to each other in different environments
Yeah.
that make cats upset. Uh, that yeah, if I don't know, better understood, had a lens for, you could see when
Mhm.
you're being taken advantage of or when something's not normal. I feel like
Yes,
that happens all the time. Like, if whatever it is, this social norms w- were were clearer and like written down and I could look at it, I would see, oh, that's not normal, and I accepted it as normal because nothing seems normal to me.
exactly. And there's stats now that obviously as women or as people who identify as women, the danger in sexual and partner relationships is much higher, right? But there's also data for autistic women or neurodivergent women that it's even higher because of our discomfort with trying to understand, so much of a relationship and so much of sex and sexuality is uh not stated, right? It's just you make assumptions and you have to just imagine what the other person is thinking, and that's very difficult when you're neurodivergent,
Yeah. Oh God, yes. Thank you. Um, so I've seen a few times, and I'll cite my sources. I'm doing a segue here. Um, that hybrid work tends to be written by people with marginalized identities. I've seen that in or the places where I've seen people talk about hybrid work rather than just creating it.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the book, The Lyric Essay as Resistance, which is editors are Bossier and Trebald, and then also editor of Brink Books, Alicia Jetalo says in their anthology, like this is the place where people who are not allowed to speak have found a way to speak. Um,
Wow.
it's so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
And both of these, I'm actually just citing the like the author's note in the beginning of these anthologies,
Mhm.
which not or not author's note, editor's note, um, which is not, I think, a place where many people dwell when they're reading a book. Um, but I think that's true. I think that when I find something hard to express, that's when it comes out different.
Yeah.
Um,
Because
I
there's
don't
no
know, does that
really,
resonate for you?
absolutely it does. I think um once you start, thinking about different identities, once you think about marginalization, once you think about intersectional identities, each one sort of chips away at what's normal, I think. What's normal, I'm putting that in quotes. Um, so that you have to hide so much, you have to um, protect yourself so much more. I think there's so much more going on with language and with interiority that's different when you're a member of a marginalized identity, and that makes complete sense to me. And I think just on my own, like it never made sense to me to just write like a normal essay or something. It didn't work for me. And I don't know if I could have put that into language, but that's a really good way of saying it, I think.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think so.
Yeah.
Um, and so then, as it relates specifically to your memoir,
Mhm.
um, I'm interested in like how much intention you put into that. Like, did I assume you wrote what came and then dealt with it later. Um,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
I think each section is different.
It's
Um, can you tell me
yeah,
that?
I was definitely um trying to do that. I was looking I was actually excuse me, as I was writing, I was looking at different examples of different formats that people have used in fiction and nonfiction and how I might integrate or adapt some of that. I remember looking at Carmen Maria Machado's collection and one of her stories, I think it was called Inventory, and it was just like a list of things. I loved that. The book Burn Your House Down by Gina Frangello. Um, I had actually started an essay that was all about A words, which eventually ended up in here. And then she had a whole section at the beginning that was the same, which made me freak out at first, like, oh shit, I'm copying without realizing it, kind of thing. Um, yeah, so I was definitely on the hunt for the right format that would really speak to me. I can't remember the name of the book right now, but there's a fictional work that's all about a artist, and the format is like gallery works, or like a collected book of annotated photos or something. And I really loved that for the essay that I wrote about sexuality and sex. There was just something about that when I chose that, it clicked, and I think it's about that. It's about trying to find the right marriage of content and format. And that was an exciting part, and it was also a challenging part to do that.
You, that was so cohesive, coherent. Um, which is not weird. I was just impressed. So did you write the book in order? I can't imagine that you did.
No, no. In fact, I started this as an essay, and up to that point, I really hadn't written much nonfiction. And I think part of that because I hadn't given myself permission to do that. I didn't think I had a life that was worth exploring, to be honest.
How
Um,
indulgent.
I know. But I started writing this essay, and I was bringing in bits of my very complicated mother. I was bringing in bits of this bad relationship I'd had. And then the essay just kept growing and growing. And I was like, okay, this is more. This is a book. And so then no, I was sort of hopping around between like, I want to write about my mom for a while, but I can only do it so much because then it's going to drive me crazy. So I'm going to hop over to this other essay. So yeah, there was a lot of like, playing around with when I should approach different topics, what kind of topics, all of that. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. Um, the when and how to approach different topics. You already talked about the how. Um, but I feel like it's mostly chronological, like probably not entirely,
Yeah.
because I mean life doesn't even happen like that. Um, how did you end up ordering it the way that you did?
I think I was trying to give it some semblance of chronology, but also knowing that was going to be impossible. Um, I was really sort of taken, and now I can't remember them all, but I've named the different parts like bad woman, trashy woman, maybe slutty one. I don't remember the various, categories. And that was me kind of looking at all of these weird, disparate essays slash pieces that I'd put together and trying to figure out what are the categories of my life, if that makes sense, or in some ways, I was kind of thinking about the identities of my life, the various, marginalizations, the various intersections, all of that kind of stuff, and trying to bring together content around that. And in some ways, it worked out to be chronology, and in some ways, it just kind of was out of left field. And I thought, no, I still need to keep this.
Yeah, and I mean, like, at a certain point, adulthood is adulthood and childhood is childhood, and emerging adulthood is emerging adulthood, and it's not.
And I doubt that this is a unfamiliar experience for a lot of people, but life is not just moment after moment after moment. It's you're circling and you're winding and then you're coming back and then you're obsessed with this one moment that you can't get out of your head. And then, you're back over here and like we're constantly time traveling, right? Just in our own head. Sometimes we guide that time travel, and sometimes our rainbow brains are like, hey, remember this shitty moment from junior high? And so it's all over the place. And in some ways, I was trying to honor that of like, there really is no chronology. We're living at all moments, all the time.
That's so beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, it's true. And also like, okay, this is something that I always get really excited about when I'm reading, when like there's a reveal or a callback that
Yeah.
really hits. Um, and so um you also do that. Like we don't, I mean, our narrator doesn't know this whole time that she's queer or autistic or, allowed to be an artist or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and so when we get maybe not callbacks, but like reveals in that when she gets these revelations,
Mm.
it's really exciting. Um, I guess this isn't really a question. I was gonna be like, how do you do that? But I think that probably you're like, I'm ordering the book and I get excited too. How
Well,
I
I
feel.
was actually thinking about how, so I had the strangest good luck of having two books come out pretty much within a couple weeks of each other.
That's
And
crazy.
one, yeah, it just happened to be that way that my memoir came out in June of 2024, and my collection, Exile and Guyville, had come out just 2 weeks before. It was bizarre. But even more bizarre is that I had written a short story for this one that was in some ways based on uh, an experience in my life. You know how we do that with fiction, right? Um, but as I was writing my memoir, I was like, I want to revisit this and talk about how I fictionalized some things that were real, and I want to talk about that intersection between reality and unreality, if that makes sense. So I adapted the story and I put footnotes to it to try and like show, like this is what was actually happening. Look at what I did. Look how I covered that up, kind of thing. And to me, that was another part of like revisiting things over and over and trying to figure out. I have heard authors talk about, I keep talking about this kind of topic and this kind of topic, and I never quite understood that until now, where I'm constantly revisiting the same things over and over, trying for a new understanding, maybe, but also just seeing how I could retell that story to give someone else an understanding, So yeah, I'm not quite sure if that was related or not, but there it was in my head.
Oh, you just I'm like embarrassed to say this. You just put together, I feel like I'm kind of a slut for a footnote. Um, and I'm realizing like it was probably between you and Maggie Nelson with her like footnotes on the side
Yes, I
did that
loved
for
that.
me.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, and because I don't want to call it meta. Like it doesn't feel meta
Hmm.
to me, though. Of course, it is to be like, look at my piece of writing on writing.
Yes.
Um, but it's the insights and the like. I don't know. I feel like I'm part of the detective team
Yes.
and stuff like that. Is really cool. But what I meant to say, where was it? Oh, okay. You mentioned Carmen Maria Machado earlier,
Yeah.
and I read.
In the Dream House.
Thank you.
Yeah. Because
But
I was inspired by that one as well, for sure. Yeah.
every piece is different for. But I read that before I read her short story collection, and there are a
Oh,
couple of stories in there. at least one, like one popped into my head immediately when I was reading the short story collection. Um, cannot remember the title of the short story collection either.
Mm.
In the Dream House
Uh,
is sitting on
her
the shelf.
body, her
Yes.
body and other parties. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, they're both sitting on the shelf in front of me.
Mm.
It's my MFA books are in front of me.
Mm.
Um, the same story is told in both.
Mhm.
Um, and I like having that insight. So, okay, for folks who don't know because they're silly gooses, silly geese, um, Her Body and Other Parties came out before In the Dream House. Her Body and Other Parties is a short story collection. In the Dream House is a memoir or is billed as such. It's nonfiction.
Yes.
Um, but I would say it's linked essays or something like that, right? Um,
Hmm.
and so seeing the fiction version after the nonfiction version is like, I don't know, it's weird, but it's
Yeah,
very
it
cool,
has to
very
be.
insightful, especially knowing the fiction version came first. And so you're
Hmm.
talking about you used, and I mean, okay, I read the book when it came out, which is like almost 2 years ago.
Hmm. Yeah.
I read it on a plane, which is weird. So that's how I've placed it in my mind. I was
Uh-huh.
like, uh, I know just what trip I was on when I read it, right? Um, it it had that same like aha to me as the Carmen Maria Machado
Oh, cool.
thing, which is like, I don't know, you get to be part of that experience of how am I presenting this story versus like, let's be detectives inside this story.
Hmm.
Really crazy, but really fun experience for a reader.
And I love those kinds of reading experiences. So I think that's why I gravitated to different forms and different formats. I mean, like you said, you're a slut for footnotes. I am a slutty slut for like any kinds of different formats or anything. Give me even if the story is meh, the format will do it for me.
Okay, but the format is part of the story.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right.
So this is a good segue too for what I'm trying to develop into a question. My questions are really just notes. Like I wrote down hybrid work,
Yes.
written in order. Um,
Yes.
those are my questions.
Hmm. Hmm.
So we've got the I had a professor, um, the the great Lori Oslin. She's a short story writer. Um, Dear friends, go check her out. She's phenomenal. Um, who said whatever it is that you're reading, the piece will teach the reader how to read it.
Yes. Yeah.
Which I think is just facts. Um, when you are working with new forms, and I keep saying detective, which
Hmm.
whatever. Um, I also feel like especially with hybrid work, um, people are not necessarily, and I would say just you don't know what you're getting into.
Yes.
People aren't necessarily sure how they're approaching it.
Hmm.
Um, and I know from talking to people that like a lot of people are really uncomfortable getting into hybrid work. Um, do you have you ever like experienced that in your own reading, like, before you got into hybrid work, but also
Yeah.
how do you interact with those people who are like, this sounds fun, but it's weird?
Yes. I think there's a lot of us that have experienced the time when we read the classics, right? Growing up, all the old white guys. And a lot of them, I think, were very deliberately obtuse with format and, hybridity and that kind of stuff. And it felt very much maybe the fact of them being white men. I don't know. It felt very much like, look at me and look what I'm doing kind of thing. And I hated that kind of stuff. I didn't ever want to write hybrid nature kind of work just for the sake of doing that. And I wanted to bring readers in along for the ride. I think the way I approached it for this book is I wrote the
That's really good phrasing, bringing them along.
yeah. Yeah. And I think in this book, I knew I wanted to do that and I wanted to kind of introduce what was going to be happening. So I wrote a very straightforward, pretty much essay at the beginning that was kind of like,
But it's a
this is
list
what's
too, isn't it?
happening. What's that?
It's a list too, right? Like you're like, I'm breaking it down for you.
Yeah, and I bring in kind of a weird concept of being the narrator and not being the narrator, but also like trying to like, this is what this book is, everybody. This is what's happening. This is me exploring. So you're going to see different, I don't say this, but basically implying like, so you're going to see a lot of ways of me exploring it. And in that way, kind of helping people understand why I'm writing in different ways, if that makes sense. Yeah.
That's perfect. That was the answer.
I don't want to be obtuse just to be annoying.
You're like, well, I lay it out for you,
Yeah.
which is, but it's really useful. Like I taught a class on collage recently,
Mm,
and bless him, someone I know took the class, and he was like, I don't get it. Every time we read or discussed something, he was like, I don't get it, and I'm so honored that he took the class. Like he trusted me with this.
yeah.
And eventually he did. He was like, "Hey, wait a minute, is this thing I did that?" I was like, yes. He's amazing. He has a couple books of poetry out, so I'm just gonna say his name. Salvatore Marici. He's an incredible poet. His books are on Ice Cube Press, and he's just a really good guy.
Cool.
Um, and and I think all you really actually need is an openness to a new experience.
Yes.
Um, but people do get so frustrated when their expectations are subverted. Um, ooh, ooh. I wonder, this is not a writing thing. I'm wondering if perhaps that they or we can harness this this out of fish out of water feeling to better understand our marginalized writer friends.
Yes. Yeah. I think there's also an element of, at least for me, giving myself permission to just be weird and just to do like, you know, to do things in a different way or to like, this is the way I want to write this, and I don't really care what anyone else thinks. Especially if you come from uh, I got an MFA later in life. So I was able to sort of put off a lot of the pressure of like write this way kind of thing. But it was also an experience if I had to tell myself it was okay to write the way I was writing. Um, and then to keep telling myself it was okay. And then to give myself permission to do other things, to write in a podcast format, to make some music, to do this and this and just let myself explore, which I don't think we let ourselves do that often when it comes down to it.
Yeah, I love that. Um, and I want to talk about your other work.
Mm,
I mean, I love art, period. But I'm, most familiar with, most comfortable with, most excited about writing.
mhm.
Uh, Words on page writing. Have to have that caveat, but writing can be anything. Um,
Mhm.
so tell me about your other work. Let's start with,
Yeah.
say, podcasts.
Well, I can't remember if we talked about this when we were recording or not, but in 2019 or earlier than that, actually, 2018, a good friend of mine said, "Hey, let's make a podcast." And I said, "Cool. How does one do that?" And so we taught ourselves how to make a podcast. And in that, did a lot of different research on types of podcasts. And I discovered this whole other world of audio fiction, of audio drama, like really harnessing the radio dramas of the 40s and 50s and then bringing it to the modern world. And I loved that. So I created, instead of like a novel, a piece of work that was an entirely an audio, made for audio kind of experience. And that was such a unique writing experience of like, likening it probably to like a screenplay or something like that, but then also performing it and putting myself out in that way.
That
And
is
it was,
the Wyrd Woman.
yes, and it was very vulnerable, but also extremely gratifying. So from then, I've just been doing more and more, finding different ways to tell stories. Your cat is so freaking cute.
You just want cuddles.
What's his name again?
Frenchie.
Frenchie.
Thank
He's trying to Frenchie right now, is what's happening. Oh, buddy.
uh
Loves you
what
so much.
I know he's perfect. All he wants is cuddles. All right. I will speak human. Um
Yeah, so I think from there it's been in some ways too, like podcasting. I don't know about you, but I was in college in the late 90s and I had it in my mind I was going to go into journalism as a way to merge writing with something practical because you got to be practical, right? But of course, I'm starting in journalism right as journalism is losing its mind and, not able to transition to online. So never was really able to do much of that. Today, I feel like I'm using the podcast to write for a magazine like I always wanted to create my own sort of magazine, to create my own sort of zines and my own sort of work. And that's really gratifying. I think also it's a powerful way of you don't have to worry about gatekeepers. You don't have to worry about the slow publishing schedule. You get to see your work immediately and you get to take full ownership of your work. And since that's kind of still rare in the writing world, it's really fun and gratifying in that way. Same with music too. You can create some music and put it out and you don't need anybody else to weigh in.
I have seen I've seen heard I've heard some of that feeling about um sorry, I'm trying not to use like brand names. Um about the newsletter, like the newsletter blog
Yeah.
platforms where like we used
Mhm.
to have blogs or
Yes.
newsletters. And I know I've been talking to a lot of people who write fan fiction lately. I recently did an interview with Dr. Philip Goldfarb Steert for this show
Mhm.
on fan fiction, and it sounds like a lot of A, the like Substack Medium people, and B, the I know there's like a lot of websites, but like the AO3 people
Yeah.
um are are just disinterested in the game, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
they, like you're saying, get to own the means of production.
Yes. And I feel like with me, there's still dueling impulses. I want that feeling of being able to produce and get things out, like, and that's where the podcasts and the music and some writing is I'm doing it myself. But then I still have this desire to reach as wide of an audience as possible too. And um, presses are going to get you that. So I'm trying to sort of straddle those lines, and it can be infuriating and confusing, but also valuable too.
Yeah, and I mean I don't know. Like I don't have any experience with it, but I'm sure that there are folks who are like, this is my public consumption content, and this is my um mainstream content.
Yeah,
I hate the
yeah.
word content. I can't believe I just used it twice. Um,
That's what it is, right? We're all just content.
no, no. But something about that, like I control the entire life of this piece, I think really
Yes.
brings us back to I'm making art because I'm making art,
Yeah.
and that's so. I think that's all that matters.
And I think there's something to the times in which we find ourselves and the shitstorm that continues to come from our leadership, that owning the means of production is very attractive. As media gets more and more consolidated and they're all spouting the company line, it's very nice to have your own. And
He likes to bite. He's very sweet. He doesn't hurt me.
No, my cat, Winona Ryder, likes to bite my nose. Yeah, uh-huh. There it is. Yep.
I'm always worried that people are going to get really alarmed, and I'm like,
No,
cool.
that's cats.
Your cat.
Cats, baby. But yeah, I think like my most recent thing, which is the Art of Resistance podcast. I wanted that to be a podcast because it's accessible to everybody, right? And I'm telling stories of people who have used art throughout history to resist the status quo. And if I had waited to try and get that published as a book years down the line, it's not going to be as helpful or useful or free to people, like it might be in the podcast world. So choosing messages in that way is
Even
also, yeah.
optimistically, you put the book together and someone picks it up. I will say that that took a year, and that's ridiculous. That's not how that works.
Mhm.
It's still, again, optimistically, a year before the book comes out.
Yeah, at least.
Optimistic. Yeah, those are both
Yeah.
like ridiculously short timelines.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Um,
yeah, I think it's increasingly a choice that writers and other creatives have to grapple with is where do I put out my content? Where do I put out my art so that I feel a sense of accomplishment and satisfaction and pride, but also so that the people who need to see it and hear it can get it when they need it and when when it's most powerful to them.
I want to say I'm sure I'm on the record with I'm not a podcast guy.
Mhm.
I have trouble with audio for whatever reason.
For sure. Yeah.
Um I need to have something to look at or like something to do with my hands. But I've been
Sure.
doing that lately.
Mhm.
Um and I'm still like the processing's just not happening. Um sorry. Let me rewind. I'm okay with allowing my brain to space out or whatever when it
Mhm.
needs to, but it's been really, really and I'm also like not really taking the recommendations that people have sent me over the years. I'm following the whims. I've got the Art of Resistance on my I don't know, my queue or whatever, and I've got like this comedy group that does Reddit stories. And then I'll like look up a favorite writer.
Yeah.
Um, and I play it while I'm cooking or something, right? Where I'm
Yes.
already occupied so that my brain is not thirsty for activity.
I think that's key. I've had to do the same thing. I can't just listen to stuff. And it's not just like that need to do something. It's also like I just don't process it very
Hmm.
well. This is why I need subtitles when I watch just anything.
I can't hear
Um,
without reading.
I can't hear without subtitles. But I do the same thing where I do a lot of like just stupid painting or something or
Mhm.
coloring while I'm listening, and it helps me process it more actually.
I have coloring
Um,
right here in case I
yeah,
need it.
exactly. And I think then it also feels like a little fun too.
I'm really, really grateful to hear that too, because I also like I definitely can't do it while I drive. I'm
No,
grateful to hear it because
no,
people are always like, "Oh, that sucks. Have you tried this one?"
no,
No, I
I
didn't
can't
try
process.
yoga.
Yeah,
Um, I definitely can't do it while I'm driving. I will either get distracted or I will get into it. And I would rather drive.
exactly. Yes.
Um,
Yeah,
like I can't listen to talk radio. Like, I mean, that's the same thing. We just call it something else.
yeah.
Yeah, I just find that really gratifying. You've got other projects though. Tell me about your other projects, and then I will let you have a Tuesday.
Yeah, I think making this show, The Art of Resistance, is gratifying a lot of things for me. One, like true autistic fashion, I've been obsessed with things since I was a kid. And one of those things was always like history, uh, dark, dark history.
Of
But
course.
also, yeah, but also, I was a morbid freaking kid, but also like, the always been super obsessive about music, about art, about all these things. And so the ability to actually kind of talk about my special interests, about my obsessions,
Yeah.
super fun, super fun. But what I've found by doing this is that, you know, some people are reaching out and being like, I needed to hear this. Like this is giving like a little bit of not just hope, but perspective that like we've been in some of these places before. We just haven't learned our lesson. We haven't remembered because, you know, our recall of history is so shitty now. But like, so it's helping to place where we are in time as well as placing where we are. If we're a neurodivergent person, I don't know about you, but I've never been able to access the normal methods of protest. Going to a protest is a freaking nightmare. Going to volunteering at, you know, political offices, having to call people, having to talk to people, any of that is a nightmare. So I always felt like a failure when it came to resistance and protest and things like that. Now I'm trying to help other people who might feel that same way, and reminding them that their art is a power, that their creativity is a power, that, you know, we have that power, even if it's on a small scale, even if someone out there like you on a plane is reading this book that I put out and it, you know, it meant something to you. That's powerful, right? Like, so I don't know. I'm trying to help other creative people and artistic people with that perspective, but also with tools to help them do that. And that's the company I'm calling Rebel Yell Creative.
So I am also, because art doesn't pay the bills. I'm also a community organizer, and that's like a massive, and maybe maybe it's a massive pet peeve of mine because of that neurodivergence.
Yeah,
But it's a massive pet peeve of mine that people think that I'm going to say rallies are the only thing. And I say
yeah.
rallies because protests have action items. Protests have a specific purpose.
Hmm.
And I think what we see a lot of now is rallies and not I have trouble saying marches too, but
Hmm.
rallies and walks. And it's so important, yes, to gather and see that you are not alone, that people are passionate, that people are willing to put their bodies out there on the
Yeah,
line for what they believe in. But that is the most visible, sure, but the smallest smallest kind of protest,
yeah.
with even, I mean, depending, right? With even the smallest impact. The things that we do, I'm getting on a soapbox here, but a lot of the time, especially when I'm more actively or more visibly in my community organizer role, people will be like, "What can I do? I feel like I'm not doing enough." The things that we do that have the most impact are talking out loud to the people we know,
Yep.
using the services we want to see in the world.
Hmm.
Every time you walk through that door, they get to say, "Look, we helped someone."
Hmm.
Um, and uh, the I don't know, do something
Making,
else. A third
yeah,
one is
making
also about
making
talking.
culture. Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
and people always say, that doesn't that doesn't feel like enough. Like, surely that's too small. Surely you're wrong. And then I ask, have you done it? Have you tried it? Um, and of course they haven't.
Hmm.
Um, but really, all change fundamentally, there are studies upon studies about this in the world, starts local.
Yeah.
Starts with you and your three best friends.
Hmm.
Um, because it's easier to make change, say, at a city level, and that shows the momentum to make it happen state, regional.
Yeah.
But also like our art projects, our collective art projects, like our mural project, for
Hmm.
example, in which we've got one person doing design and six people painting, and one person saying, "Yes, use my wall," and then 10,000 people drive by it.
Yeah, that's not nothing. That's huge. One of the episodes I did in the show focused on a group of Chicano artivists in the 1990s in LA. and they had this meeting with the Zapatistas in Mexico. And the whole entire focus of the meeting was to make stuff, to like put on little plays, to like, sing songs together. And when you look at that, you could say, well, that doesn't do shit. That's what you had an afternoon and you put all that together. But then everyone that participated, there were two members of the band Quetzal that came home, they recorded the song they put together, they spread it out to everyone. And then in East LA and these other areas, they put on these collective songwriting workshops where uh, this woman that's part of it, Marta Gonzalez, speaks so eloquently about it. She's like, this is the language that people understand. This is, you don't have to give them theory. You don't have to give them, all the inner workings of a
And
government
in
for them
fact,
to
it's
enact change.
probably counterproductive to do that. For one thing, it's boring.
Exactly.
For
Exactly.
another, it makes us feel small.
It makes us feel very small, whereas these people are like, this is my experience. And oh shit, that's your experience too. Like, then you're able to like create a community in that way while also creating something beautiful and
And
artistic.
there's another difficulty, I think, with how frustrated and how angry, and we should be frustrated and angry people are,
Hmm.
which is, sorry, there's something that with how frustrated and angry people are
Hmm.
is further upsetting to hear and recognize, but arguing with people only, and you should know this, like, because it happens to yourself, only
Hmm.
makes them dig their heels in, which is why
Yeah.
having conversations is the thing to do.
Yes.
And that takes like a lot of work to be patient and open and whatever with people that you are sure that you disagree with.
Hmm.
But the only thing that changes people is people. It's
Hmm.
not arguing and it's not showing up in mass. It's
And I
seeing,
would say,
seeing each
yeah,
other's humanity.
yeah, and exactly. And I would say that's what we do as artists and creators is we show humanity, we show empathy, and we allow maybe people to connect with others that they wouldn't have in their circle. They allow them to connect with different experiences and maybe learn something. Um, and it's not to say a mega person is going to read my books because that's not going to happen. But like, I don't know. I think there's something very powerful about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, we got all my favorite topics today. Okay, so we've got Rebel Yell, we've got the books, we've got the podcast and the story podcast,
Hmm.
the audio drama.
Hmm.
Is there anything I'm missing? You make music.
I do make music, and that's mostly just it's kind of just a fun project for me. This last album that I put out, I was kind of thinking of it as a concept album because I was such a nerd and I loved Tommy by The Who when I was younger, and I loved like all
Love
that kind of
stories.
stuff. Stories, yes. So I kind of challenged myself to make stories in this album. I published under Nuclear Shadow, which again, morbid friggin' kid. But it's a really fun way to put stories together too.
I love this. Thank you. Is there, because I'm well over an hour with you now. Is there anything you wish I'd asked that I didn't? Anything you want to make sure people know about?
Gosh, no. I think one thing, last year I was at the Des Moines Book Fest, and I'm going to be there again this year, just in a small thing. But I was on a panel about memoirs. And I think people have this concept that writing memoirs it can be a cathartic experience, but then you write it and then everyone understands, and yay, all is good. I was a living example that like sometimes shit goes bad after you write your memoir. Like I I wrote this thing and I tried to be very empathetic towards people involved. I changed names, all that kind of stuff, but I'm no longer in contact with my family because of this book. And
Did they
in
read it?
some they read parts of it.
There we go.
And the parts that they read were all about themselves.
I did a control F and looked for my name.
Pretty much. And it was fascinating the things that they objected to, things that I would have never expected them to object to, and the things that they, you know, accuse me of lying about and things like that. All that to say, I think that writing memoir is a beautiful thing. And I think I had to write my memoir in some ways to free myself. Um, but that's not to say that, it's always uh, it's not always going to go the way you think it is. And that can be bad and that can be good at the same time. I just don't think it's something we talk about enough, when we're writing nonfiction. And I'm trying to talk about it more, so that um, I guess people understand that.
I asked if they read it because I honestly can't imagine most families reading. I don't.
That's the thing. My family they're not readers. So
Uh,
I thought I was going to get away with it in a lot of ways.
but you also
Um,
said the stuff that they took issue with. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Keep going.
no, no, please go ahead.
The stuff they took issue with surprised you, and I had that experience. I don't have a book, but I had it was my first piece that I published in years, and it was like a very big deal to me because I was just like rekindling my identity as a writer.
Hmm.
I had an aunt who, like, I posted it and she read it, and she, on someone else's page, not even my own, this is on Facebook, um posted a bunch of complaints about it. So my dad's family is um from the Sawana region, the Middle East, and I wrote in this essay that all of my dad's siblings married or procreated with blonde-haired, blue-eyed people.
Hmm.
There is one exception, but that wasn't like making that point didn't wasn't salient. And my
Hmm.
aunt was is one of those who married in. Um,
Oh.
and that's what she took issue with. She was like, um, I'm not she was like upset that I called my, I don't know, in-laws. Are they my in-laws? No, I just called them my family. She was upset
Uh-huh.
that I like called them white, which is a color, by the way.
Yeah, that's a
And
fact. Yeah.
um and that she said that that there were plenty of opportunities to get to know my culture, but what she cited was something that was a an annual thing that happened after I moved to the West Coast. Um and it was so confusing and jarring to me because this piece was about like the whole point of the piece, and it's basically got a refrain about it, was that like I don't think I'm Armenian enough.
That
And
you don't think you're Armenian
yeah,
enough?
and her response was, "How dare you call me white?" on someone else's Facebook page.
That's, but then how do you engage with that or argue with that? Because you're like, you missed the whole point, milady.
And
Yeah, it's fascinating and
I don't
enraging.
I don't know how I would react if I was a side note in somebody's piece and I felt like misidentified. I feel like I would be like, yeah, I know what writing is. I don't know.
I know what writing is, and I'm not going to go on some random other Facebook page and bitch about it. Yeah, that's weird.
Even if I was bothered, even if somebody was like, I can't think of something, but like, even if I felt misidentified, I still think I'd keep it to myself. I'd be like, this is a piece of writing that is about how this person feels about their identity.
I think
I'm
one
not
thing
going
I've
to
come,
name
yeah,
anyone. My dad has seven siblings.
and what I think I've realized from writing this is some people have such a shaky sense of identity that if you poke at it at all,
Yeah.
it is,
Well, no,
they're going to lash out hard, you
no
know?
one was with one of my cousins I did specifically reference, and that was just because she is blonde and also she speaks Armenian.
Hmm.
And I was like, this juxtaposition is like opposite to me. But that's the only family member I have like ever really actually reference in the piece.
Hmm.
So it's interesting too. Like you feel, I don't know, targeted even though you're not referenced at all. No?
Well, the after the book came out, I started getting a weird phone tree of a lot of the male relatives in my family. And the things they were talking about was very, very strange, but all of them kind of related to this idea that like you are defying my sense of a person and like who I was. And my father was obsessed with how I had described our neighborhood growing up. And he was like, it was nicer than you. And just random things like that. And it was very strange and disheartening, but it led to some really painful stuff, you know? Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah.
Being an artist is weird.
Sure is.
Um, okay, cool. I will let you go there and I will probably, with your permission, harass you about coming back sometime. Um,
Love
Thank
that.
you so much for hanging out with me today. I'm going to move into
Yes.
just a few itty bitty brief updates from the Midwest Writing Center. Um, Here's what we have for you. On May 8th at the Atlas Collective, the bookshop in downtown Moline, there's a killer reading. Um, Headlining is Margaret Yap, who's going to be faculty at the Collins Writers Conference, teaching poetry. Her book, Green for Luck, is a really, really, really phenomenal book of poetry. She really showcases a lot of different styles and understanding of how words and and lyric work. So hit up that reading at the Atlas Collective. May 15th is the deadline to apply to the Young Emerging Writers Internship Program. It's also the deadline to submit work for the Atlas, which is the book that the interns publish at the end of the summer. The Young Emerging Writers Internship Program is a paid internship for writers 15 to 19 years old. We work on generative writing, we work on writing and workshopping skills, and of course we publish a book at the end of that. So please apply. And if you are, for whatever reason, unavailable to attend the internship, you've got a lot of off time you've got a lot of time out of town, you got another job or whatever in the summer, but you are a writer in that age group, go ahead and submit to the Atlas. Um, oh, shoulder cat. Oh, baby shoulder cat.
Winona Ryder.
Oh, she's perfect. What else do we have? So in on May 28th is the Foster Still Chapbook release party. That's two books coming out that day. That's at Roz Talks. As you should know, totally free event. Jenna Goldsmith, the former poet laureate of um Rockford, Illinois, is one of our new MWC Press authors, and then Brittany Jekyll, who I worked really closely with her on her chapbook Witch's Mouth. So I have a lot of excitement about that book coming out. So those two books are coming out on May 28th. Come join us at Roz Talks for that. And then of course June, the month of all months. First, the conference, the Collins Writers Conference, is June 25th through 27th, but on the 24th, we're going to sort of I don't know, have an appetizer for that program. We've got a Spectra reading at Rostox with Andrea Rexilius and Eric Baus. Again, totally free event. And then the conference, the 25th through 27th, we've got um, four 3-day workshops. So these workshops build on each other. We've got novel writing, we've got poetry, we've got nonfiction, and we've got short stories. The nonfiction class is going to be sort of writing personal stories and how that could be memoir or essay. So that's great. That's with Sin Kitchen, who's a professor at Knox College. Our novel writing teacher is Tatiana Schlody Bonet, author of three three horror books. Her class is not going to be genre specific. Those books are incredible. She's a really incredible teacher. We had her do a class at the Midwest Writing Center online last year. And that's for folks who are either trying to get into writing their novel or who are stuck in the process of novel. And it's going to be great. I already mentioned Margaret Yap is our poetry instructor, and then Adam Al-Sirgani, current poet laureate of Rockford, Illinois, will be our short story. instructor. His book, More Hell, is on Whiskey Tip Press. He did a reading at the Atlas Collective in the fall, which was just phenomenal. And of course, our evening events for the conference are all free. We're also going to have some lunch and learn um, sessions with Allison Means from University of Iowa Press. And the University of Iowa Press and MWC Press will both be taking manuscript pitches. Adam, Margaret, and Sin will be doing manuscript consultations. Details for all of this stuff is on our website. The manuscript consultations are an additional fee, which goes to the author who's giving you that feedback. Whew. And then our evening events, we've got the faculty reading that is also a conference attendee open mic. We've got a social event. We have found that we really like doing these socials for the conference so we can just hang out and be people together. Um, that's where I'm going to end this. I feel like I always do this in just one breath. But May and June are just full of goodness. Um, Whew. Okay, now we will go back to Amy for our writing prompt for today. I want to remind folks, give yourself 5, 10 minutes, whatever it is you can spare on a timer. Whatever comes out is whatever comes out. There's no prescriptive situation here. I often end up journaling on the prompt or writing a list rather than like making some perfect piece that's ready for consumption or whatever. Just the point is that we're writing. So Amy, please take it away.
I think what I would love for everyone to think about is their own creative goals. Um, the idea, you and I talked a little bit about the different ways of telling stories, different means of production. And I think that a lot of that comes from trying to figure out what's most important to us, and whether you're working towards a goal that still serves you, and you're working in a project that you still enjoy. So I think my prompt is to think about your current projects, your current creative goals, and how are they still fitting in your life? How are they still serving you? And are they still serving you? Are they still something that you want to pursue? Is it something you need a gatekeeper for, or is it something that you can work towards on your own? Does that involve a different format? Does that involve a different way of telling that story than you thought of? So lots of different things there, but really focusing on your creative projects and goals, how they're working for you, and if they're working for you, and where you might go with them.
Fantastic. I need that. Thank you. And I'll also link to that where folks can pick up your journal guy.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. This is what that came from. Thank you for prompting. I put together a guided journal about how to think about your own art as a form of resistance and how you can be doing that.
Hell yeah. And I'm gonna own it. Uh, thanks again for hanging out. Thanks folks out there for watching, and as always, please write more light into your life.